Okay, welcome back. So now it's been 24 hours since I washed these rocks and they are ready to be base coated. So first thing you want to do is you want to get some parchment paper or newspaper or paper towel, something that you can put down that you can usually throw it away right afterwards because this could be very messy when you're base coating rocks. And the reason why you want to base coat your rocks is because you want to allow yourself to have a smooth surface to paint on. Plus, rocks are very porous and they have a lot of different holes and grooves, and this will actually smooth out your rock to prepare it to actually paint your design. So, in this video, we're going to talk about base coating. So, after the rocks are washed and dried, I did that in the last video. The next step you're going to want to do is prepare these rocks to paint. Now, you don't have to use a base coat, but if you can use a base coat, you do want to use a base coat because it's going to provide a much more smoother surface to paint on. It's going to see how rocks are discolored. They're not smooth and everything all the way across. It'll make them look a lot better. It will allow the paint when you put your colors to pop because you have that base coat behind them. And one of the things that I think about is when I have a light colored rock, if you like the color of the rock and you just want to do it on a natural rock, you can. But it actually steps up your game a little bit when you have a base coat because any imperfections won't show. But if you have some really nice rocks like Santorini rocks or rocks that you paid a lot of money for and you don't want to do a base coat, you don't have to. But you do want to seal your rocks in the end. And we're going to talk about sealing the rocks in the next video. But right now, we're going to talk about base coating. So, what do you base coat your rocks with? Well, the best thing that I found to use to base coat my rocks is acrylic paint. It spreads easy, it dries fast, and it allows the paint to adhere to the rocks a lot better. One of the ones, as you can see, I've used this one quite a lot, and this is an apple barrel white. It's really inexpensive. You just put a thin coat on your rocks to base coat them on the side that you're going to paint. You let it dry if you're doing fronts and backs. Once the front dries, you turn them over and you paint the backs. So I just recently went and bought me another one of the white, but I'm going to show you with a lot of different colors and a lot of different ways to paint your rock. So let's just start with some of the basics. Now, you can also base coat with Mod Podge. Now, people think that Mod Podge is sealer. It could act as a sealer, but it is not sealer. Mod Podge is for rocks is more like glue, but it will provide a protective barrier on your rock. So you could base coat if you like the color of your rock and you don't want a color at all, you just want to do it on a natural rock, you could use Mod Podge if you wanted to. And you can paint directly over Mod Podge if you want. So you could use that. Of course, again, like I said, most people base coat with white. You will probably use white more than any other color because you're base coating. And almost all of my rocks I base coat with white, but you can use any color you want. For stubborn bad rocks or dark colored rocks, you could use black. Again, I'm talking apple barrel because this is gonna you're gonna paint right over this, and this is really just to seal your rocks, to smooth them out, and to give it a really nice polished look. It just steps up your game. It's okay if you want to just go directly on the rock and start using paint pens or paint, but I would recommend a base coat even on regular rocks, unless they are like, really good condition. You can even use extreme glitter as a base coat. A base coat is just a coat of paint applied to your rock, which helps cover the imperfections and prepares the surface to be painted. And you can use anything for a base coat. What I do is because I've been painting rocks and I have like a little bit of this left, a little bit of that left, any leftover paint you have, you can also use as a base coat. So, what you want to do is you want to get yourself some brushes. A flat tip brush works best for me when base coating because you don't really require any detail or anything. And rock painting is not that expensive. You can really find these reasonably priced. I got this big hat pack here off Amazon, I think for about $8 to $10. So they can run, different prices. And then you can also buy brushes, and I'm just going to show you some quick brushes while I'm getting them out to give you an idea. So this is actually one of these brushes, and you get a wide, flat brush. That works really good for base coating. Now I also will quickly show you, you can also sponge on your base coat. You don't have to paint it on. You can also rub it on with your hands if you want to. You can use spray paint to spray it on. But you know, when you're doing your rock painting, you want to get yourself a decent, inexpensive pack of brushes. Now, these are flat brushes. They cost about $5.99 for a pack, about like that. And you got a lot of various sizes depending on how big you're going to be painting your rocks. So you may want large or small. And if you're going to do a whole slew of white ones and you just want white base coat, you could actually just use a 2-inch paintbrush or larger. Because if you're going to just go do base coats, you don't have to be neat with it. You can just paint it right across. And it's much easier for me when I'm doing a lot of rocks to use a 2-inch paintbrush, which works. But you could use any brush that you want. And I'll show you the differences. It's really nice when you're doing it with sponges because you can actually make like clouds and designs and things like that. So I'm just going to show you some of the brushes that you might want to grab for painting rocks. Now, these are Crayola. And when I saw these, I said, oh, these are good for kids. But these are some sturdy brushes. They only cost like $4. Got them at Walmart, Amazon, and where else can you get it? Just about any craft store. So I'm just throwing some things out there to show you. These are a little bit, these are from Walmart. These are like $6. And in this pack, these are all flat brushes because you want some flat and you do want some round brushes as well. Here's another variety pack they sell at Walmart. Now, this one is great because you have the big flat brush for your base coat. You have a couple of tiny brushes. You have a few round ones in there. And you even get a sponge in that one. That's like $5. For a beginner, I would suggest this pack would be perfect for a beginner because you got the sponge in there, sponges, you have a lot of flat brushes, you have large and small brushes. These are dollar store. For base coats, these are great because you don't have to do anything special. You're just applying a base coat. And I've had these, I've been using them for quite a while. This is just some of the ones I recently picked up. But these actually last a long time. I've had them like a year and they haven't gone bad. Then after you start painting for a while and you want to get a little bit more fancy, you might want to buy some detail brushes, some brushes with points. And these are a better grade of brush. But when you're starting off right away, you don't want to really invest in any expensive supplies if you don't have to because you don't know how long you're going to be interested. But if it carries out years and years like mine has, I have a lot. So I bought these, and every time I find some on sale, I grab some more. And my kids, they buy me brushes. Like they say, Mom, what do you want for Christmas? I'll say, get me brushes. So I have another set here. And these are closer to the $15 or $20 a pack range. And then when I go to the dollar store, they have these little detail brushes, which are really good. See those tiny little brushes in there? And I always just grab a pack. I never get too many brushes. So, dollar store brushes. You got a detailed brush in there. Got all different number brushes. And then this was at the dollar store. It's $1.50. And you get a flat brush, which is good for base coating, and you get a smaller brush for detailing. So that's if you're going to be using brushes. You could also, when you're getting ready to start painting, you can use paint pens. And Poshka is an expensive brand. And if you want to invest in some Poshkas, you can because they work really well on rocks because they do have acrylic and they are permanent markers. But you could also go to the dollar store and get some permanent black markers. But the thing you want to keep in mind is that when you're getting these type of markers at the dollar store and places like that, you want to keep in mind that they don't always seal very well. So depending on what type of sealer you're using. And here's just a tray of some of the markers that I get from time to time to use. And I like Poshka the best, but you'll find what works best for you. You want to make sure that you get the type of markers that will be able to uphold the spray, because when you seal them with acrylic, when you seal the acrylic with a sealer, sometimes they bleed. So, but there is a secret that I can show you that even with the cheapest marker, you can keep these from bleeding. But one thing at a time. So anyway, today we are here to talk about base coating, and let's just jump right in. So the first method that I mentioned is Mod Podge. People don't think about using Mod Podge as a base coat, but you can, and I'm going to show you what you do. So on the clean rock, and you have your brush, you just want to dip it. I usually wipe off one side of the brush when I'm painting, and you just apply it. Nothing special. If it gets on your hands, no big deal. This washes right off. Just put a thin coat. And we're going to be using this as the base coat because we want to keep the color of the rock just at it as it is. Now, this will provide a protective barrier, give you a much smoother surface, and it will coat the rock. You can use this afterwards too. After you apply your paint, you can use this as a light protective coating on your rocks. But remember, Mod Podge is not sealer, although people say it is. Once it rains, if you put these rocks outside for a while, this will break down in the rain, and your hard work that you did on your rocks will be smeared in a couple of days. So you want to use a different type of sealer than Mod Podge. We're not going to do sealers in this particular video, but I use a Krylon triple thick sealer. You can also use all kinds of Duraclear. I have a whole bunch of different ones I'll tell you at the end of this video. But right now, let's get going because we came to talk about base coats. You grab one of these at the dollar store because when you first get started, you don't want to really invest a lot. But as you continue, you will have a lot of supplies. And if you don't have one of these little cheap paint trays to pour your paint in, you could use it directly out of the lid of the bottle. I will show you that way first. So this is one I've been using for quite a while. It's just about gone. So I'm going to be opening up a new bottle. So I may as well show you on this one. I put a W on here for white because I actually have this one as well. It's Extreme Glitter. And from the top, they look so similar. And when I'm painting, and if I'm not paying attention, sometimes I'll grab it and I go, oh no, I got this sealer. I got the Extreme Glitter by mistake, and I have a lot of them. Most of your lids on your paints will probably be white. Some of them are, and some of them are not, depending on the color. Most of them have the color of the paint on top, but you will find that when you buy a lot of them, they're not white, but the tops of them are white. For Apple Barrel, I notice Apple Barrel does that a lot. Folk Art costs a little bit more than Apple Barrel, but it's worth it because you get a much thicker paint. It actually adheres to the rocks better and brighter, more vibrant colors, and you need less coats. So even though the Apple Barrel is cheaper, pay the extra 20 cents or whatever a bottle, and I would go for the Folk Art unless there's a color in Apple Barrel that you want to use. But since you're going to be covering up these your rocks with paint, you don't have to really use an expensive base coat. Here is multi-surface Apple Barrel white. And I like that for covering my rocks as well because multi-surface means you can probably put it on just about anything. Okay, so let's get to the nitty gritty. So if you don't have, if all you have is a paintbrush, and we just painted this with the Mod Podge with one coat, and let me just show you how quickly I'll show you. This is without the sealer, the Mod Podge, not sealer, I'm sorry, y'all. This is without anything as a base coat. And this is it with a base coat. See the difference? That one you can see a lot of imperfections. And this one is much more clear. Now, this one you can still see imperfections. But if you had a nice looking rock and you didn't want to cover the rock completely, but you did want it to be sealed, you can seal it with Mod Podge and it won't affect the color of your rock. Okay. Now with Mod Podge, if you're using the brush like this, you want to make sure you wash it out and always wash out your brushes in between when you're changing colors. If you were doing a whole bunch of these in Mod Podge, say if I was going to just Mod Podge them all, then you don't have to wash out your brush until you're done. But you do want to wash out your brushes in between. And this is just regular plain water. And you just want to squish it around. Make sure you get all the substance out of it. And you want to pull it to the front to wring it out. Now, wetting your brushes is really good before you start painting with them because it will loosen up the brush. It will stop it from being really stiff. But if your brushes do get stiff when you've had them for a while, you can always just add a little drop of fabric softener in the water and it will soften up those bristles. I also put this in the bottom of my pan so that when I'm scrubbing my brushes, I can just scrub it on this surface right here and it helps break down whatever's in there. So here we go. And then I use this to wash my hands too because I could get messy. All right, let's get back to work. I also found what I like to do is just keep a little bit of paper towel handy because you are painting rocks and it could get messy. First thing you want to do, of course, is put down some parchment paper to protect the area that you're working in. This is my little office, so I paint in here all the time and it's always a mess. So I don't care if it gets messy. Okay, so what I said about not having a holder is okay. So when you open the paint, you're going to have the lid. Gives you a little bit of room. You could just pour some paint directly into the lid, and you can use this to paint out of. So what I have, I got my brush, gonna wring it out. What I usually do to wring it out is to just pull it forward. And you want to stick your brush in the paint. I usually wipe one side to prevent a big mess. And then you just take your rock and you just apply in general strokes. You want to cover the whole side, one whole side of the rock because you're going to need to lay it flat. That's why you're not doing the whole thing. You're going to lay it flat. And of course, you got to have a dry side to lay it on. So once you get it covered, do the sides, do the whole area. If you're doing a two-sided rock, once this dries, you just flip it over. And that's one. Now, what you could do, if you wanted to, is you could set this on top of a little rack or something to drain it, and it'll hold it up. It'll support it while you're doing it. But let me just do a couple of these, and I'm just applying a base coat. I'm applying it to one side in short, quick strokes and setting it down. So if you want to do it with a brush, and I usually do it when I'm relaxed and I'll have my little drink on the side and take me a little sip and do a little painting, relax, listen to some good music, and base coat my rocks. Okay, so we've done 3 so far. So as you can see, a little bit of paint goes a long way. Now this one got wet from the brush when I was rinsing my brushes, but it's no big deal. It will dry. Once I wash my rocks, I usually let them dry 24 hours, and I don't really apply the base coat when they're wet because it won't really go on as easy. It won't dry as evenly, but for that little spot, it's no big deal. And you can always go back and touch up the spots where you think you might need more of a base coat. If you want to cover the whole thing, do the sides, all 4 sides. You can always add more. You can add more. And when I am not on camera and I'm relaxing, I am really so fast doing this. So you'll see as you start to do these rocks, you'll be able to do it so fast. But you want to relax and you want to have a good time. So today I'm chilling. Okay, so we've done 4 rocks so far, the base coat. And then you can look at the rock and just see if there's anywhere that you missed. On here, I didn't, but I wanted just a little bit thicker because some of these rocks that I found while I was out hiking have slight discolorations, and I want to make a beautiful, evenly shaded masterpiece. Okay, so that is one way. that you can base coat your rocks. Now, when you're pouring it in the lid, like I did, if you're using your lid as a holder, make sure you get all the paint out of the lid, because when you put that cap, if you don't get it all the way, if it's not totally empty when you get ready, put it back to seal it back up, it will be all over the place. So, and a little bit, as you can see, a little bit of paint goes a long way. Now, in this what I do with my paints like this, I only poke a small hole in it to get the paint out. But you can actually make the hole as wide as you want. I started doing that because I noticed if I make a mistake and knock the paint over, I don't lose very much paint, if any at all, when I just poke a hole and then I just squeeze it through the little hole. But you can open it up as wide as you want. But if you got small kids, or if you're like me and you do five, six, seven things at a time, you may knock it over. And so when you just put a little single hole in there, in here, you have a small hole. If you knock it over, it's not going anywhere. See? So I started just using a hole and not taking the whole piece out and exposing the whole thing, so that if I did have an accidentally knocked it over, it's not going to squirt out right away. And usually you'll know when you knocked it over because you'll hear it. Okay, so I'm going to put this back on here, and I'm going to show you another way to base coat the rocks. Now here is my water pan, and I'm going to rinse this out, and I'm also going to use it to rinse my hands. I got this little nice bucket, and I'll just rinse my hands, because you can get really messy. Or you could just be extremely neat, and I'll show you how a lot of neat people do it. But after you've done this for so long, you don't even think about um, getting dirty or hands messy, because you just do. And like, you might want to put on paint clothes. I always have on a nice pair of pants, and I'll say, I'm not going to mess up these pants painting rocks, but I do it anyway. But just in case, you could always use gloves. Okay, so this is another way to seal your rocks. If you don't have brushes, or say you do have brushes, but you just don't feel like pulling out the brushes, washing out the brushes, and you just want to base coat these rocks, you could just do it with your hands and a pair of gloves. And I'm going to show you how to do that, because this is all about base coating. And what you do is you try all these different ways, and whichever one is most comfortable for you, then do that. Some days I feel like, some days I don't feel like pulling out my brushes, and I want to base coat some rocks. So just get you a pair of gloves, open it up, pour it directly in your hand. It's white paint. Rub your hands together, and you can slide it around, and you got a base coat. Boom. Now, when you're doing it this way, you want to have a drying rack or something you can put them on. So, because now that you've done them with your hands, they're going to be covered on both sides. So you want to just do it like this, and then you can set it on a drying rack. They have a thing called Scat Cat, and it's to keep, people use it to keep cats out of their plants in that section. And you get about a dozen of these Scat Cats mats, or you could even get them. I notice, like, if you get them and you get them from a rock painting store or a craft store, and you're getting them for rocks, these are the exact same mats as the Scat mat for a cat. But if you buy them at a craft store, they are almost twice as much. I got 12 of these little mats for just a couple bucks. I think it was like $7 or $8. But when I went to the craft store, they have a different name. They don't call them the Scat mat. They just call them some other name, which, art related name. And they were double the price. So I thought I was going to be getting something special, because I bought it at a craft store, and I got them home and put them side by side, and they were identical. So I would go for the Scat mat from Walmart or Amazon. It's cheaper. But if you can afford it and you don't mind, go to the craft store and buy one. You can also use bottle caps or anything to set your rocks on to dry them. You could even use some of your regular paint containers if you want to, depending on how heavy the rock is. This one is going to be too heavy for that. But if I was going to go with this right here, with this one, and I just wanted it up high to dry, I could just set it right there. A lot of people, I've seen people use bottle caps, um, cardboard boxes, anything. When you're doing them this way, because you're gonna have to set them down flat, so that they can dry. And if you base coat them like this with your hands, which is, as you can see, is much faster. You don't want to lay them on newspaper and you've done both sides, because then your paint's going to come off on the newspaper as it dries. So that's why I recommend getting a scat mat, or you could even make your own drying rack. You could poke nails through a cardboard box from the bottom up, and then you have these little spikes sticking up, and you can set your rocks inside a cardboard box and they could dry. So this is, I'll do one more like this, because I like doing it like this, because you see how fast this goes. Look, and I'm doing both sides. So the drying time is gonna be better, because with ones that I'm only doing with me using a brush, although a brush will give me a more smoother surface than rubbing it on will give me, it still is twice as fast. And what you can do is, when you are rubbing them on twice as fast, you just do a second coat and it'll cover it perfectly. You won't be able to tell the difference between having used a brush or having used your hands. If you don't have gloves, you can do it with your bare hands, because acrylic paint will wash right off your hands, not your clothes, but it will do your hands. Okay, so that is a second way to seal your rocks. Here's the sponge method. Okay, a lot of people like to use the sponge method. It's quite relaxing. You need a bigger surface. Now, I have all kinds of, I'll tell you, you will be very creative when you're looking for supplies, especially on a tight budget. Here's a larger holder, but I still want something a little bit bigger, because see how large this brush is? I could just put half of it in and go like that, but I'm just going to show you a couple of things. Egg carton. Who doesn't have an egg carton? Look at that. You can throw it away right after, or you can rinse it out and use it again and again. And then there's some cookies that came in here. I can use this. Look at all these little slots. I could put a color in each one, and I often do. And the old ice tray. Each of these different separated areas, you can put colors in those, and you can just become creative. Also, the other side of the egg carton, you know, the one that has all those little holes in it. I think I have one somewhere. Those two, you can, in the other side of the egg carton, where all those little sections are, you can use those. You can put your paint colors in different holes, and they're all available. Okay, but right now we're talking about base coating. Now, you want to look at your rocks to see how many you have, because you don't want to waste your paint. Okay, so you want to try to pour as much as you think you might need, but if you still have a lot left, you can either base coat some more rocks, or you can pour it back into the bottle and use it again. Okay, so what you would do with the sponge, you want to put your sponge in there, get it all on the top. You don't have to cover the whole sponge. You just want to get, and then you can go like this. That's pretty cool. Look at that. See, I'm covering it, and you're getting a nice thick coat. I love the look of how they come out when you use a sponge, because they almost looked airbrushed when they're finished. And I will show you. And you just dab just like you would if you had the brush. What's also good too is, like, when you use the brush or when you use your hands, if you see, you know, and you're doing this with the sponge, you could just take the sponge and go over the rock that you did with your hands. The hands, when you do it with your hands, you just rub them all over, they get coated, and you're going to cover them most of the time anyway. But sometimes you want that white background, part of the white background, to show. And so what you might want to do after you've done that is just grab the sponge and just go over the ones that you just did with your hands. You can do it while it's semi-wet. It'll still adhere in most places. Sometimes you do have to let it dry. And depending on the type of brushes you have, sometimes brushes, they will shed and you may get a hair. You don't want that to dry because it will dry on your rock. Okay, so what I want to show you is something really nice about this base coating. You can also base coat using any other color. Since I have this one right here, and this one just happens to be Folk Art, it's a matte blue. And of course, matte means it's not shiny. It's kind of usually have a dull look to it, but it'll shine once you seal it with sealer. So what I've done with this, and because the blue is much darker than the white, I don't care because it's just going to be a base coat, and I kind of like the two-tone color. Now let me show you. You can base coat with a darker color. It's going to show you. And as you can see, some of the white's coming off in there. But this is what I do sometimes. If I'm going to make a sky in the background and I'm doing base coats and I know this is going to be a sky and you want to write like some cool jazzy phrase on it, you got clouds, automatic cloud coverage. So you can mix and match colors when you're applying them with the sponge. It's really easy. You can also do it with your brush, but I just want to show you how nice this comes out with the sponge because you're halfway there. I mean, if you're making kindness rocks that you're going to put nice words on, you can easily get a beautiful sky or a background by just dabbing on another color. And then you want to let that dry. So you lay it there to let it dry. And that's using the sponge. And then and of course, look at my hands. And I always use my paint bucket to wash my hands. And of course, just one little tip. When you get ready to start painting your rocks, make sure you wash your hands before you start painting your rocks. Because if you use lotion and things like that, they're going to stick to your rocks and it's going to make it harder for the paint to adhere to the surface. So you want to, of course, start with clean hands. Because you go, oh, I'm just painting rocks. I'm not going to wash my hands. The rocks, they're dirty. Yeah, they are. But the paint, if you got lotion on your hands, it's going to get absorbed on your rock. And it won't last. Okay, we only got about 2 more left to do for base coats. And then we're going to move on to something else. And as you can see, here's our Mod Podger. And it's still clear. It just gave it a little bit of a shine. And there's various different types of Mod Podge. And this is a rock that's base coated using the Extreme Glitter, just the Extreme Glitter by itself. And let me just give you an idea of what that looks like. I'm just going to pour it directly on the rock to show you. I think I got one open. This isn't open. Let's see. Yeah, here's the open one. And I just want to show you what it looks like. Now, you could pour it directly into a little container if you're only going to be doing a small area, but I wanted this rock to be covered in Extreme Glitter. So I have a clean brush and you put it on and I'm going to show you. It goes on clear. Look at that. And when it dries with glitter on it. And this particular Extreme Glitter is called Hologram. And it has a greenish gold look to it. And I'm going to show you that. I'll show you the side that I did this side already. Let me see. So when this dries, I will show you the rest. Now, this side is covered with Mod Podge. Did that yesterday. Nice glossy shine. It's not sealed, but it's covered. It made a base coat. This side, I used the Extreme Glitter in the color of Hologram, and it's going to dry with sparkles on it. So I like the Extreme Glitter so much that I could do a whole set of rocks in Extreme Glitter, but I won't because it can be expensive. And we are putting these outside as kindness rocks. Okay, so back to the brush. And this paint, Apple Barrel paint, dries really fast. I use all kinds of paint. Apple Barrel, Folk Art. I'm going to show you something I just picked up the other day. Amazon always have sales. Now, this is called Art Key. And here's a new collection of their paints. And you want to use acrylic paint, works good. You can use an oil-based paint. But for me, acrylics work best, is my first choice for rocks. But you can use just about any kind of paint. Spray paint, indoor, outdoor paint, wall paint, and so on. Okay, so now let's just go with this one. I'm going to go with this one. This is a folk art. This is also matte. And since I've been using it for quite a while and it's not that much left, I'm just going to dump some right there. Now you could be neat again and, start putting the little colors in there. But because I'm base coating, and then I'm going to give these 24 hours before I actually start painting my designs on them once they dry, my paint will dry out by then. Now you can put your paint in a plastic garbage bag and cover this up if you have paint left over in it and use it the next day. It'll last a lot longer and won't dry out as quickly. But because I'm just going to be doing this right now and I'll probably be painting other rocks later, I'm just going to dump it right in here. And the best part about it, if you don't feel like rinsing this out, is you can throw it in the garbage when you're done. So I got my flat brush again, and I always just apply the paint to one side, and I'm going to show you how this covers. This is also a base coat. Now, what I normally do, I will use my white base coat. I'm going to show you the difference. This is without the white. This is just a base coat going directly on the rock. And I'm going to show you the difference in what the base coat actually does, because I can show you better than I can tell you. Okay, this one has been painted without a base coat underneath, and I'm actually using the paint itself as a base coat. So I'm going to set that here for it to dry. And now the ones that we painted, let's see what some of our first ones that we did. See if I got it dry. This one is pretty dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what this color looks like under a white base coat. So here's the rock. Look how smooth that goes on. And look at that white showing through. I'm going to show you side by side so you can see. See the smoothness? Now see how porous this rock is? See that little groove in there? When you put the base coat on, it actually helps to fill in those grooves. But I'm going to show you the difference. Okay, this is with a white base coat underneath, and this is without. See how you get two different color textures? This one, you can still see the rock through it. It's not really quite covering it. It's not as nice. Whereas this one kind of gives you more of a glassy, glossy look. So if you don't have the white paint to use as a base coat, you don't have to. But like I said, it'll step up your game if you do. And look, these are both the exact same color, but this one has a white base coat under it, and this one doesn't. Let me show you something else really quick about base coats. So let's say you decided you wanted to use maybe a darker color base coat, like black. Now, this is dollar store paint. I don't use it normally, but when you're doing stuff like base coats, you could use it no problem. But the only thing about dollar store paints, they are usually watery, more watery than the others. It says it's acrylic, but it's a big difference in the other paint, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So, and I'm going to throw this tray out when I'm done. So this color is so dark that it doesn't really matter that I got this light color under there, because it's still going to be dark, because this black is so black that it actually is very black. So I'm going to wash the burgundy out of my brush. And when you wash your brushes, when you squeeze the water out, squeeze them to the front and get the water out. And that's good. And it's good that you got a damp brush. Okay, so let's just do this last one in a dark color. So we have our black here. And here is the black paint. I'm going to show you what I mean by how watery this dollar store paint is. Look at this. Look. Look at that. It is, and it's thin, and it does make a difference. See, look, I'll show you. Look at the dollar store paint. I'm going to show you. It does not cover well, look. And it dries dull. And I'm just not a fan, but if this is all you have, then go for it. For a base coat, it doesn't matter. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because I hate to waste paint, and I know that that paint is not some of the best paint at the dollar store, you could always mix it with some good paint. Or if you have thick paint. Now this this is a metallic black. And this one, yeah, this one is a metallic. I believe this is a folk art one. And I'm going to mix it with the dollar store paint. One good thing about acrylics is you can mix them. And this one is just about empty. So I just want to use it all up because I want to base coat my rocks. You see the difference in the two colors? But I'm going to mix it now. This is the dollar store paint without the folk art mixture. You could use any type of paint, but dollar store paint is probably going to be thicker. But watch, look how smooth that goes on. Did you see that big difference? Look at that. Look at the coverage. Look at that. Just quick strokes. This is when I mixed it with a little bit of folk art, and this is it by itself. And I hate that it bleeds through like that. You're going to probably need, for the dollar store paint, you may need 2 or 3 coats of it if you're using it by itself. So it may seem like it's saving you money because it's a dollar store. But if you got to put 3 times as much on there, you may as well just get the good stuff and use it. So I'm going to cover one side of this. And you don't always have to wait for the paint to dry. Depends on what design you want to use. So on this one, because this is such a dark color, and I feel like being creative and having some fun because you've just learned how to base coat your rocks. So the next thing you do, dive in and get to painting. But let me show you what I'm going to do. Okay, so I got this brush. I just feel like fooling around and I want to just try something on a wet rock just to give you an idea because you want to have some fun. So I'm going to go just put some little spots on this side because I'm going to write a really nice phrase on here. This is with the side of the brush. Just tap, 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 tap. And that's going to be a really cute design. Now, I'm going to turn it this way. Even though it's wet with the black background, it's going to be fine. This is with the sponge. Look at that. Look at those colors. Boy, am I having a blast. And on this side, let's see what we're going to do. Let's just do something for fun. How about some of this green? This is Artkey green colored paint. And I just want to use a little bit of it just so I can have a variety of colors. See that little tiny splurge? And look, I'm going to just go in with this black because you'll see why it doesn't really matter on this particular rock. Look at that. So when this dries, it's going to have all these designs on it, and it'll be perfectly ready to have a nice, encouraging word put on there. And I'm going to set that right here. So this one I've actually base coated and created a design all at one shot. Okay, so we've done all the rocks. And of course, you want to wash out your brushes and you want to let these dry. And these dry so fast, like this is in real time. These are dry. I could turn them over and do the other side, and which is no problem. Now, the best thing about these is if for some reason you get another color paint on there like I just did, when I half-heartedly picked it up and my hands weren't completely clean, the best part about this is you can cover it up. It is so easy. If you make a mistake, just cover it up. Okay, so I will cover one up for you just so you can see what I'm talking about. And then we will be done. And then, oh, I promised that I was going to show you something afterwards. I will make sure I show you. I'm going to show you some finished rocks that I did. Okay, so let's just get our old handy dandy brush. And I'm using this because I want white by itself. And I put so many different colors in this side that I can't use it with white. So look, this is where I touched it at. You just go over it. Now, this is the other side of the rock. You just get the paint on there, base coat. Because once it dries, you're going to start painting after these base coats dry. This is dry. See how fast that dried? And you just turn it over and do the other side. Most of the time when I do it, if I start, whatever way I start, that's what I usually do. If I start with the brush, I usually do them all with the brush. If I feel like doing them with my hands, I usually just roll them all out with my hands. And you can use any color. It doesn't have to be white or anything. It could be any color that you have that you want to use as a base coat. Sometimes rocks are in such bad condition, you might need 2 coats. And if you do, make sure you let them dry in between. But look how fast these dry. Look at that. These are the ones we just did when we started the video. And they're ready to be done on the other side. Last but not least, if you are lazy, you can just squirt a little bit of paint directly on your rock and paint from there. I do that sometimes when I don't feel like, getting out my little paint palette and filling it up and doing it all perfectly. Because eventually you will find what works for you and you'll do that. And once you get good at it and you find out what you're most comfortable with, you'll probably end up doing it that way. So, anyway, we base coated rocks. Thanks for sharing with me. And as I promised, I was going to show you some of my other rocks. And let me get this off the stand. And let's see. I got to move over here, guys. And I'm going to show you. See if I can operate the camera. These are some of the ones. I hope you can see these. I'm holding a tripod in my hand and I'm not the best at it. These are some of the rocks that I've done. So let's see. Hopefully you can get a look at them. And I've done more rocks. So anyway, that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed painting with me. And in my messy office, here's more rocks. And these are the ones we just base coated. So happy painting. See you down the road. Bye.